this is Cope. Oh, we're just going right into it. This is Breaking MedTech, where we help small medtech, med device companies grow through digital marketing and sales.
Right.
Because we don't want them to die.
Right. Our goal is to help small med device companies grow and scale their business with sales and marketing, things that we've learned through multiple decades of doing it in the field in small med device and med tech. And today's topic is storytelling and why it's important for small med device companies. And I've been told that I'm a good storyteller, and Ryan's going to test me on it here in a little bit. But we want people to understand that there's value in stories, because if you read books about psychology and you read books about marketing and sales, people remember stories. It's how our brains work. Cavemen used them. The things that you remember are stories. And there's even a book came out in 2004. Christopher Booker wrote it about the 7 basic stories of man. Like there are no other stories. I don't know whether I agree with it or not.
What is it like? Everything's like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, kind of. Right?
All movies come back to like a handful of actual movies. So all right, so let's talk about. We'll be honest. Right, first thing about like the industry itself. Med tech, med device doesn't do stories.
We
Rarely.
tend to do. We put the tech in med tech, right? Like we talk about the technology. We talk about the size of the screen. We talk about the kilowatt hours it takes. We talk about the length of the thing with the plate and the screw.
Yeah,
right?
This is a 180-degree purchase for a pedicle screw. That's what med device does and med tech does.
Typically has done that.
And you know what the funny thing is why I think they do it is because they're afraid. They're afraid that they're going to get hit with by the FDA for saying something they shouldn't say. And
it's funny. I will push back on that, although you might be right. I've often felt like so much of med device and med tech is created by sort of engineering. Like there's an engineering DNA to it. And engineers tend not to be storytellers. They tend to be
the
technical
worst.
people. No.
They're technical
we love our engineers.
Yeah, they're technical people.
But they're not the people that are telling stories that are memorable, generally speaking. Right now, Elon Musk is sort of an engineer. He's a hell of a storyteller.
Yeah,
right?
I would say he's like an anomaly, right? So, when you were like, but all right, so that's why I think part of it is that they're afraid or of being different. And pharma, which is super
storytelling,
and it's actually way more controlled than med device.
Yes. The restrictions under which they work are much more constrictive, yet they tell way better stories.
Yeah, I think it's Skyrizi. I'm not sure. I think that's the one for like eczema. And they tell a story in the commercial of like, I was afraid to wear sleeveless shirts, but now I can wear sleeveless shirts. And she's like at a party dancing, and it's like, that's a story.
All within label.
If I was all within label, and if I was someone who suffered from what she was suffering from, I emotionally connected to it because I'm ashamed of my arms and but I see her and she's having fun and oh my goodness, and
I'd like to be like that.
I want to dance at a club without sleeves on.
Again, it always comes back to Ryan's belief in the expression of dance.
So story, right? And so I get that we come from an industry that is just not about it.
Typically not
about that life.
Right.
And I think people really connect the stories. It's not just me. A lot of people support that idea. Yeah. But when you go and say it to somebody who's doing med device or med tech marketing, you're like, we're going to bring some story and some narrative into the way that you do marketing.
Yeah.
They typically, well, that won't work here. We're selling B2B, and B2B people don't care about stories. And I'd be like, no, they're humans.
Yeah, they do.
They're humans. Just because you haven't done it before doesn't mean that it doesn't work.
Well, I think like you think about, I was joking earlier, thinking about like from Shakespeare to Spielberg. They're some of the best storytellers ever. Shakespeare didn't come up with any of those stories. He was just telling them in such a way that was so memorable that they're some of the most memorable of all time. Spielberg makes you think about like hating a shark, loving a little weird looking extraterrestrial, right? Like, and you can remember the stories. They stick in your head because they're stories. Now, are we going to be doing that about somebody's distal radius plate?
Maybe.
Potentially, but maybe not quite.
And it's not toward, like, here's the thing is, like, if you're selling B2B, that story's not towards the patient, right? That story's towards the doctor. And you're not doing it like, again, within, like, staying within label, you're specifically using a story to talk about the things that that doctor cares about.
Right.
And there are ways, like, where you use story or you use narrative language in your marketing, or when sales reps describe things to people. And that's really, it's not like I'm saying, or you're saying or suggesting that, like, you turn your new distal radius plate into a short feature film that's going to be submitted at Cannes. But like what?
Yeah, we're not turning it into King Lear.
Like when you're, is that Shakespeare? When you're describing it to people or using language for it, can you bring some of that story stuff into it? I almost think, like, if you want to dip your toe into it and you have a product that's being used by people and they like it, and you want to dip your toe into storytelling, is video customer testimonials. Yeah. Do video customer testimonials.
What would you ask? I always thought, like, when we did testimonials, I wanted to say, like, hey, what problem did it solve? What were you struggling with? What did that feel like? What did it sound like? What did it smell like? Tell me about what it was like. And then when hopefully you started using ours and it solved that problem, what is it now like? Like, what is, and that's telling a story.
Yeah.
And it's really that simple, right?
It's if you just did that, if you just did like video customer testimonials and you asked them the right prompts, and you then promoted it the right way, and you, like, there are other parts to it, but if you just did that, it would probably be a big step up from what you're doing right now. And if you were like, well, we're so early on, we don't have customers, then go get people to you suggested something a couple episodes ago of, like, why not just go film people complaining about the problem? And then, like, if it was like a show and it was just me interviewing somebody, like if I was trying to sell into laryngoscopes and I just every day interviewed anesthesiologists and nurse anesthetists, and we talked about, like, specific problems in the industry and ways that they solved it and ways that they thought about it. And, like, that goes into, like, content. But, like, you're doing content in a storytelling way. But, like, if you just wanted to dip your toe into it, you have some customers, customers will do testimonials, like, hop on a Zoom call with them and go, all right, or Riverside. And go, all right, I'm going to ask you some questions. I want you to describe it to me, try to make it as personable and interactive as possible. It's almost like a good rule of thumb to do it from, like, a practical standpoint would be, like, hit record, ask them a couple questions, and then ask them the questions.
Right.
But, like, even if you just did that, that's telling a story. It's telling a story that somebody then can, a future customer can look at and go. That's why customer testimonials they see themselves in the story of your customer.
I struggled with that too. What did they do to solve this? Because it's a pain.
Yeah. So that's why I think story is so important. And you control, I said to you control the narrative. So everyone is waiting on
you're going to
bated breath. I think, again, that's the way I use these things. I think that's how you describe it. Okay.
It's accurate.
You're an English major, so you would know. So tell me a story.
Okay. So 2014, we were selling a disposable laryngoscope. Weren't many on the market. The market didn't even actually know they needed them. It's a little thing, 90-degree flashlight you sort of stick in somebody's mouth to identify the trachea, and then you stick it into a tracheal tube into them so that you can breathe for them, either the OR or sometimes in the ICU. We had a really cool one, but nobody seemed to care about it. They were always saying, hey, you know, like what we use now, it's awesome. And I was talking to anesthesiologists and some CRNAs, people who were actually using it. And I couldn't understand why they thought it was so cheap to use reusable. Like, and I'd get them to complain, light's bad. And I was in a big hospital in New Jersey, and I had a very, very distinguished chairman of the Department of Anesthesia at a teaching hospital say to me, Mark, you have no idea what you're talking about. We do these things. We turn these things over for pennies. And I was like, I remember sitting there in his big, luxurious office going, I just don't believe this. And I said to him, what, like, when you use these things, then who brings it into your room? He's like, I don't know. When you use it and hand it, and then next case somebody comes, there's another one. And I'm like, oh, these people think there's a laryngoscope fairy, right? Like, and they just magically, la-di-da, here's a new one. Ta-da! Like Santa Claus. And I realized they had no idea the work that goes on in the ice under the water level, or the ice. And I started talking to the people who had to do the work. And they're like, oh my God, these things are impossible. We can't do it, blah, blah. And now there's new joint commission rules. I got to buy more and we lose them. We think the OR throws them out. The OR thinks we're, and they started telling me all these stories. And this guy ran the department. He's brilliant. And he had no clue. And I learned to talk to different people and tell the stories. And then I went back to that guy and I was like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I talked to your staff. Here's how many hours they're spending on this. Here's how many that are lost every year. Here's how many that are broken or they can't figure out where they go. And he didn't say to me, wait a minute, there's no laryngoscope fairy? But on some level, he was kind of like, well, I didn't know any of this. And that's when I realized I was talking to the wrong people selling this product. The people who thought it took pennies were the ones who weren't doing the work. And when you talk to the ones who were doing the work, they were telling me all these complaints, all these issues, how hard it is, how much, and that was the story I started to tell to people. And I would tell people who thought it was inexpensive, I would tell them the same story. And they were like, oh my gosh, really? I'm like, yeah, we've estimated this. But I had this story that I could go to talk about that. But like, you can almost see, we've all been in those spots where you're with some hyper-powered, smart customer who doesn't know what they're talking about, and they want to correct you. And people would laugh at me. And I'm like, yeah, now when I say I know what it's like to sell the first of things and I know what it's like to be with a small med device company, I've been laughed at and told I don't know anything by one of the bigger hospitals in New Jersey by a brilliant person, because nobody had ever talked to them about this, because nobody was talking about it. And 8 years later, the whole market switched to disposable laryngoscopes. We just happened to be on the forefront of it. But we were on the forefront, and I had people telling me I was crazy, and I wasn't. But people always loved that story because I could say, I know what it's like to be in the foxhole, to sell the first. I've been laughed out of more hospitals than I care to acknowledge. And that's a story that I tell founders who are like, can you help us? Like, what do you mean? Like, we have new products. And I can say, I've sold where people didn't know my name, my company's name, or my product name. And I've been laughed out of offices. Here's the story. And 8 years later, the whole market changed. And they realize I'm one of them. I'm a kindred spirit. And so I hope I told a decent story of that guy making fun of me, because he was wrong. He was wrong.
This entire thing was set up just so Mark could say, it's just so Cope could say somebody was wrong. All right, so let's combat, because my big thing is, I talk to these groups and they go like, well, I don't have the money to do it. Okay. Okay. You don't have the money to do it. That's fine. Right. It's free. Use a founder brand. There's a solution for doing that. We do see some companies who do this really good in explainer videos. Okay.
Yeah.
They're animated explainer videos. If they do it correctly, those cost a lot of money sometimes. Sometimes they cost a little bit of money. The ones who cost a little bit of money, you probably have to do a lot more legwork. You could probably do it really simply literally just,
and this is telling a story.
Right? Telling a story, right? It just, for me, it's an effort thing. Like, you don't feel comfortable. You don't know how to do it. I get that you don't know how to do it. Yeah. Like, I've never, anything I ever suggest to people, it's rarely where they go, I don't believe in it. Though sometimes I do get I don't believe it costs pennies. Like most of the time it's like, I just don't know how to do it. Right. And there are books you can go read. So like I'll sell like 2 more books now. Go read Building a Story Brand 2.0 by Donald Miller. He gives examples. He tells you how to do it. He tells you exactly what to do. He tells you why you want to use story. You can go read This is Marketing by Seth Godin. You could read, honestly, any of Seth Godin's marketing books because he talks a lot about story and narrative in there.
And those are structural. They give you like sort of the structure. And I would say for people to think about it, say like, hey, what's more impactful to you? If I say you should try this product, or if I come in and say, hey, I was just talking to somebody who does what you do, and they were saying they had this issue and this problem, and it sounded like this, and it showed up like that, and here's what they told me they do, or like. You're going to listen to that. You're
going to listen to that way more, and even like
a story.
The marketing that you see, like because if you, I'll even like this is a really bad example, but you and I have like synergy being thrown around, or like excellence, or like that type of stuff. That's actually it's story based. It's just horrible story-based stuff, but you're using like narrative, and like the narrative is that you're going to synergize something. It just doesn't fit. Like it doesn't fit. You're just using the word synergy because you want to use the word synergy. It's a cool word. Cool word. I'm gonna get that on a t-shirt. Synergy. Cool word,
bro.
But like, what was the example I gave before about the OR stuff? Eliminate the stress of OR scheduling. Like, to me, that's story-based language, because you're telling us like it's the beginning of a story or it's the middle of a story, but you're not going like, if you weren't using story-based language, you would just go efficient OR software.
Right. That's a technical statement that engineers would say.
And it technically is true.
And no one cares.
But no one cares. It doesn't evoke emotion. It doesn't do anything. But
I'm going to give you the best example I can think of advertising, and you're going to laugh. It's those lame commercials that you see on local TV that have like in black and white somebody coming in and they can't find the right pot and the right pan. And they're like, oh my gosh. And they're nice, a nightmare in the kitchen. And then you buy this system and it's in black. It goes from black and white to color, and their life is better. And their kids are loving the meals they made, and they've learned how to cook because everything's easy. Those things are lame. You could do them in any language and watch it go like, this must be terrible for somebody to have all those different pots and pans. I wouldn't be able to make. And wow, look, it's even in color. This is
their
wonderful.
Kid loves them now.
They're telling a story of somebody going to become a hero.
Yeah.
With pots and pans.
It's a hero with pots and pans. Or like
non-stick pots and pans.
Non-stick pots and pans. Mark has his own line. Cope has his own line. So what I would like, if nothing else, you could believe me or you don't have to believe me. But what I would say is, again, people make purchasing decisions based on emotion. You have to put them in a story. You have to put them in a narrative. You have to control what people think about you. So if you are able to, and this is straight up Donald Miller, I'm not claiming this is my own. This is like, if you could put someone in a story, if you can put someone in a situation where they feel like they're being the hero, or they're part of the journey, or like, and you can help them through that process and they feel seen in your messaging and what you're talking about and what's on your website, and they resonate with it, and it pulls at their heart, which I know is not a real thing, but if it pulls at their heart and you can achieve any way of doing that, whether it be like creating anxiety or creating stress or talking about the things that you know makes them feel like that, you're trying to evoke emotions. You will never evoke emotions with
efficient OR operations,
but you will evoke emotions with reduce the stress of OR scheduling.
And let's tell a story that tells you what that stress feels like, what causes it, what it sounds like, what it looks like.
And you can do all of this in label. You can do all of this, and you can do you have to be creative and figure it out. And I would say go read Building a Story Brand. Go read some Seth Godin books. Go listen to some Donald Miller podcasts. Go listen to, I think Dave Gerhardt has people on his podcast, which is B2B. It's SaaS based, but I do think you could pull from it. Because I don't know if you see your dad, I'm a dad. Okay. I'll fully admit, when I see the Father's Day Dove commercials, I cry.
Yes.
And
yeah,
it makes me want to buy Dove soap, not because of some technical thing with Dove soap, but because it makes me feel an emotion about
by the amount of glycerin in it. I want that feeling with my kids.
I want somehow Dove soap is going to help me do that, but that is what you're aiming for, and I know that it's a lot easier with direct to consumer, or maybe it's not easier with direct to consumer. People just think it's easier with direct to consumer because they think of consumers as consumers, and they think businesses are businesses, but the people at the business are consumers.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
It's just going and spending some time and figuring out how you could do it with your brand and working that type of language into your messaging, which is again the theme that we're always going to talk about. And then figuring out how to do it creatively.
Yeah. So our take-home message is tell stories, right?
Tell stories.
Which is easy to say, harder to do for most people. But I would say Ryan came up with a bunch of really good examples. And we'll go back to the beginning. Customer testimonials are the best.
Yeah.
But if nothing else, customers complaining about something and everyone saying, oh my gosh, we all have that, or many of us have that same complaint. You're starting to build they relate to it, right? And that's what Ryan was talking about, the Dove commercial. He relates to that, so do I. And then you start to figure out, okay, how do we use this to attract people, and do we solve that problem? Can we describe it? But what it starts with is the story, and it could be somebody going from can't cook to your pots and pans made them be able to cook and have dinner with their kids and make them impressed that dad or mom made something. That's a story, right? And there's great resources to learn more about this. Like Ryan said, a couple of books he mentioned, and it's Dave Gerhardt's book, Founder Brand.
Founder Brand, if you go and read Founder Brand, you'll know how to then tell your story.
Right.
For free.
Right. Story. Yeah. So we'll put the book links, the podcast links in the notes, but we want people to understand that this is not just us saying this. This is established, and it's something that if you do, you will grow your small med device company and scale it much more rapidly, much less expensively, and with a lot more scale than you could possibly imagine if you're willing to try a couple things differently.
Yeah, and
right?
you will build customers. If you tell stories and you invite people into your stories, and you're gonna get the customers who are then gonna go and sell your product for that. Yep. That's the other aspect of it, and I can't make any promises, right? It's not like I'm going you're gonna find customer evangelists, but I guarantee you, if you have a story that people resonate with, and are oh my God, I see myself in that product. I see myself in that service. I see myself in that product. I'm that type of person. I want to be that type of person.
Yep.
Then when they use it, if you deliver on what you say you can deliver on, they won't shut up about you.
That's exactly right. That's the best. That is the absolute best sales and marketing.
Word of mouth is
word of mouth.
In-person word of mouth.
It's better than anything else on the planet.
I love social media. It's 10 times better than social media.
I think I'm a pretty good salesperson. It's way better than I am.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we're breaking MedTech this week. Hopefully we helped tell a story, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.